think you got something in your eye.
Oh, yeah?
Something, it's like white, filmy thing.
Yeah. Did I get it?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Here we are at George R. Brown Convention Center during Anime Matsuri weekend. Is that, we call
Anime
it?
Matsuri, yeah.
The convention for weebos, what's the other terms?
Yeah, weebs,
That's pretty much it.
Otakus.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put definitions up on the screen down here. Here with my good friend Sebastian. We met in middle school, somehow still friends.
Somehow.
Despite what's going on here. Can you explain to people what's going on here?
It's just how I dress.
It's how you dress normally?
Punk's coming back, dude.
I'll put a picture of a storm, 90s storm on there so they can see it. But a big part of anime conventions is it cosplay? Sauceplay? How do you pronounce?
Traditionally, I think in the Japanese, cosplay.
Cosplay is outside, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is cosplay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I want to start off the top with, we're going to talk about Fullmetal Alchemist, the manga, and also talk about the show, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, which I think is the truest to the manga. But I want to talk about how the perception of anime and manga and how it's sort of seen as a thing that certain groups of people do, as opposed to being a legit thing. Because I think that part of the reason I do these videos is for science fiction and fantasy is sort of a genre that has been pushed to the side, and that's not really literature, that's not high quality literature, that's just what nerd people read, I think part of what I'm doing here is trying to destigmatize the genre, and I think that there's a huge stigma when it comes to anime and manga where there's not quality there, it's just fun, it's just for people who like to dress up and all that stuff. But the manga we're going to talk about today got a very high literary value. It's
I'd agree.
It's deep. It's got themes that run throughout. It's got characters that are well developed. Plot that is constantly moving forward and action packed.
Not a moment wasted, I'd say.
And that is an argument against anime, is that moments can be wasted with too much going on.
The ones with multiple chapters and filler and all that.
What would you say about your experience with manga and anime, and that some of it is this kind of what people would see as like trash storytelling or reading, but some of it is very deep and beautiful and well written and well thought out.
I get the impression that the most popular ones are not very concise. They kind of go on for chapters. You do get a lot of character development, but the contrast with Fullmetal Alchemist is that it is quite brief, and every chapter or episode has relevance. I really enjoy that about
if you're into reading literature or watching shows for intriguing characters that are three-dimensional, for symbolisms and themes that are deeper than what you just see on the surface, then you could really enjoy this manga, this anime.
It's cool.
Fullmetal Alchemist, the manga, which is a graphic novel, a visual, like it's comic books, basically Japanese comic books. It takes place in what is sort of like a analog for Germany, or sort of an analog for Germany. They're that sort of traditional, almost like World War II era Germany, even where their leader is called the Führer, and they're blonde-haired, blue eyes, like stereotypical Germany. They ride in trains and wear very Germanic-looking outfits. They have Germanic names. There's a lot of characters like Van Hohenheim. And what makes this world fantasy or science fiction is that alchemy, that is a science, instead of just being, or that was a faux science, a pseudoscience back in the day. In this world, it's saying it's a real science.
It is their science, essentially.
And so what is alchemy in this world? Alchemy in our world is historical, and it was this pseudo, where they were trying to turn metals into gold to be rich. What is it in this world?
It's still some of the same with, I guess, transmuting materials into other materials. And there's a base of like chemistry, some biology and stuff like that when it comes to turning one material into another. And then there's the whole concept of equivalent exchange. And it's throughout as a law of alchemy as well as just a theme in general for the entire series.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Again, it's very well done. Is that down to the science that they use in the novel or in the series is thematically consistent, you know? So equivalent exchange is the idea that, like you said, the chemistry, the biology of things, as long as you have the equivalence of an item, its chemical compounds, whatever, its chemical structure, then you can create that item using, it gets into the realm of magic, you know?
Yeah.
You use these circles and you know, some sort of physical move like a clap or something like that, or slamming your hands down, or even a snap, and that will cause the item to become a different item of similar material. So you could take a piece of steel, a steel ingot, and turn it into a sword.
Right. Yeah.
By using the right circles and the right having the right knowledge. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the manga and in the original anime, because there is two different anime versions of this. One that was going out when the manga was going out, and it doesn't end the same way as the manga. And then another anime version, which is the cartoon version, that is more consistent with the manga.
Right.
That's called Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. The original anime and the original manga, the only manga, they don't reveal what happened with Ed and Alphonse and their mom until much later.
Right.
But in the Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, they reveal it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's not too much of a spoiler. I think knowing it doesn't ruin the series for you.
I think it's important. Actually, no.
Yeah.
There's some great shock value.
Yes.
If you see it firsthand, but it is important it's the whole plot. Like
It's the plot.
Yeah. So as kids, you know, kids do stupid stuff, but their mom ends up dying when they're young, and so they're kind of just alone because their dad's not there.
Yeah.
And they decide to try and bring her back through alchemy.
Yeah. And it's a taboo.
Right. Yeah.
Part of alchemy is that you don't tamper with souls, living things. Is the idea. Yeah.
But they try and study it and like get the biology behind it. It's like, okay, people are made out of like this
This
carbon,
much sodium, carbon,
calcium for bones,
H2O, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and then some other aspects. And so after they feel like they've done the research, they go to their basement, draw their circle, and then try to bring their mom back.
Yeah.
But in their attempt to do so, they end up bringing back what is essentially a disformed being.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And beyond it not working, there's a cost, an equivalent exchange. And what's the cost?
Tough lesson alchemy for them. They start getting, I guess, sucked in through something, and the elder brother, Edward, is losing a limb, 2 limbs, arm and leg, and his brother ends up losing his entire body.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Edward, he's so distraught and he's overcome and he wants to bring his brother back, and he uses a much simpler method where he like draws a circle on a suit of armor that happens to be in the basement, right? Yeah. And that's when he loses his other limb. That limb is lost in the sacrifice of that equivalent exchange. Yeah. And in that equivalent exchange, he also, because he's transmuting a soul onto something, he ends up seeing the truth, which that we don't have to get into that too much, but it makes it where he can sort of, he has this innate knowledge now of transmuting, where he doesn't have to necessarily draw a circle every single time he wants to transmute an item, right? However, he's missing an arm and a leg. And so here comes another science fiction concept that's popular in sci-fi fantasy is steampunk. There's a lot of like steampunk tropes in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. So his arm is like chainmail, and his leg is also chainmail, right? Automail. They call it automail, but
prosthetics.
Chainmail's different, right? Yeah. Automail, which is like with some hydraulics and that kind of thing to make the fingers and stuff work.
Yeah.
And so it's called Fullmetal Alchemist because his brother is a suit of armor, literally a soul that's attached to a suit of armor.
However, in the story, he is not the Fullmetal Alchemist.
The Fullmetal Alchemist is Edward, who's the older brother, but who is shorter now because his brother's a giant suit of armor. Yeah. So he gets there's a little bit of comedy there with that. He gets accused of being the younger brother or not the Fullmetal Alchemist. He's very insecure about that kind of thing.
However, he's the one with the higher status as he's a state alchemist.
Yes.
He has reservations about that, but
so those
helps them reach their goal, I guess.
Yeah.
It helps them.
So those are our main characters, and their goal from then on, I think they sort of give up on the idea of getting their mother back because they tried it and it didn't work.
Yeah, they learned the lesson.
But Edward feels guilt. Again, 3-dimensional character feels guilt for what happened to his brother. And so he is looking for this fabled item, this Philosopher's Stone, that is supposed to be able to help you break the laws of alchemy. It's a magic item. So again, it's science and magic sort of coming together in the series. It'll help you break the laws of equivalent exchange. And so he's hoping to bring his brother's body back because he feels extreme guilt about it. And they think that the best way to do this is to join the state alchemists. And so here's where the bigger themes of the story come from. Is sort of, you have this government entity that's very powerful that they join, and then you have science and you have religion all sort of playing off each other. And I think the story does a really beautiful job of putting the two main characters, Edward and Alphonse, in the middle of that interplay where they're leaning towards one or the other, constantly try to achieve their goal, and finding the faults and benefits in each of those.
Yeah.
This town is, religious zealots worshiping this priest, and he's been able to make miracles happen, but he's using alchemy, and he's also using a Philosopher's Stone to help achieve that goal. And then you find out that he's attached to the sort of evil characters in the show, which, I don't think we have to get too in-depth into them, but they're a product of using alchemy the wrong way. Yeah. And then they build into another one of my favorite themes of the show, which is sacrifice. I mean, from the very beginning, the two main characters pay a cost for their mistake, and are trying to undo that or correct that. But then you see these villains, and these villains, when they're using alchemy, they have no problem sacrificing others and people, right?
Yeah, which I think is what's great about the main characters, is there's a lot of moral issues.
Yes.
And they usually go the right way about it.
Right.
Makes them stand out as, because they have the opportunity to not do the right thing, to reach their certain goals.
When they find out that there is potential for others to be hurt, they don't follow that avenue, even though he's really dead set on getting his brother back, not at all costs. Yeah. He's a character that will not do it if it means harming other people, And so yes, these villains, again, going with the theme of you have to have pain to gain, you have to work to achieve something. There has to be an equivalent exchange, right? The villains don't sacrifice personally. They sacrifice others to gain what they want. And Edward and Alphonse and other good characters are constantly sacrificing for themselves in order to achieve what they want, or to help others even. They'll sacrifice personally for no personal gain, for others' gain, just to help others.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the beautiful themes of the story.
I think contrast itself is almost a theme here, with it being creation versus destruction, spirituality versus science.
Yes.
There's a lot of contrasting themes.
Yeah.
And I think they do pull at both characters throughout.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of again, religion. They're playing off even real religion, because the villains are named after the 7 deadly sins, and the main villain is named Father, which is sort of like a play on God our Father, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he is playing God. And so there's I think there's also this message about science. Even though science at the beginning is sort of the stalwart, the rock that they tether themselves to, they do start to see science as sort of a negative thing, as it can go too far.
Yeah.
There's another setting, which is Middle East setting. Ishval. It also goes into the horrors of war and the depths of what we're willing to do to our fellow man in times of war. What do you remember about that? Because Ishval, the Ishvalan War takes place in the sort of the analog for the Middle East in the series.
Yeah.
It's in the past, but they keep going back to it. And what do you remember from that?
It was the state alchemists. So in this whole series, alchemists are scientists, but state alchemists are between soldiers and scientists.
It feels
they use their
almost
abilities to cleanse, by cleanse, just eradicate.
It feels almost like Einstein, how Einstein was used in World War II. He was working on atomic research with no intention of decimating populations in cities. It feels almost like some alchemists, they see themselves as scientists who should not be used as to hurt people, but they become very directly used as weapons because their abilities are very powerful, right?
Yeah.
So
they're eradicating just indiscriminately. Children, families, all that.
In the name of government, and
they're not even clear. The people who are doing the killing they're skeptical, but still following orders.
Much like they're soldiers that are following the orders of their leaders. And they even get called by a lot of like civilians in the series will call like state alchemists dogs, like you're the dogs of the government, that kind of thing, because you just do whatever they say. And I think that irks like Edward and Roy Mustang and all the other characters that don't feel like that. They feel like they're scientists. They feel like they're doing what's right, and they don't want to be considered dogs.
And it weighs on them.
It weighs on them. Roy Mustang is alive during Ishvalan War.
He does a lot with his ability. He's able to.
He carries guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what, you want to talk about any favorite characters?
I mean, Armstrong and
the
Armstrong's
homunculi
siblings are great, but
they both work for the state. They're both state alchemists.
Yeah, and the brother is super muscular, but like
comedic relief type of character.
Yeah, he's like I guess what do people call it? Just like a puppy, essentially.
Yeah, I would argue
not very threatening, even though in physical form he's super threatening.
Yes.
While his sister is smaller than him, but super stern and like beats his ass a couple times throughout the show.
Yeah.
But I like Hohenheim the most, actually.
Hohenheim?
Just because, you don't learn about him until later, but his whole arc, you go from like hating him and then kind of understanding and like getting a full understanding. It's like, whoa, there's a lot more here than I thought.
This is a character arc that has a lot of thought and depth put into it.
Yeah. So that's definitely my favorite character. Is you see how his backstory unravels.
Yeah. Roy Mustang, I think, is probably a big fan favorite just because
he's so powerful.
He's a state alchemist. He's very powerful, and he quickly gets sort of embroiled in the, central issue of the story, and sort of has to put up a front and make sure that he is not discovered, or that he doesn't, stand out too much, or because his life is in danger. And that's interesting about him. But then also the power comes from he's a flame alchemist.
Yeah, I think one of the only ones.
He's the only one because the circle, the knowledge, again, knowledge is power in this series. There's another theme. Knowledge is power, and he knows the circle. He's got it drawn on his gloves, and no one else knows it. But then he's also a cool character because I think that at a different rate, he goes through the same understanding and evolution as like the main characters, Edward and Alphonse, of understanding the meaning of sacrifice and understanding the ills and strengths of science and the government and that kind of thing. And so I think he's a really cool dynamic character who has to navigate a really dangerous plot that sees him at knocking on death's door a couple of times,
So, I guess the difference here, as opposed to written literature, are the illustrations. That's the main.
It is written, but there's graphic to go with it, which turns people off.
Yeah, but here it's really great to see the glyphs that they use and how they work together.
It would be difficult to explain.
Yeah.
Even if it was a book, maybe at the beginning of the chapter it might have a glyph drawn, right?
Yeah.
Because
But it's definitely more powerful getting to see it, and it feels more. You get the fantasy element seeing it because it reminds you of just glyphs that. Another benefit of it being illustrated are the goofy moments, which are popular in anime. You have little goofy illustrations that aren't as serious. Somehow this show is able to pull off, show and the manga, are able to pull off having like these goofy moments right in their minute with serious moments. A super powerful villain will like make fun of Edward's height, and then he'll get like really mad about it.
A villain who you just watched kill an innocent character that you love and hate, that you end up hate. So you love the character, you hate the villain, and then they make a joke. And some people,
it doesn't take you out of it.
I don't think it does. I don't think it does.
Yeah. And with really strong. Oh, absolutely.
Get it, bro. As you were saying, the visual aspect of it, I feel like, is one thing that turns people off. Is like, oh, that's a comic book. It doesn't have literary value. That stigma is being lost as people are turning more towards these type of literature. Comic book movies are the most famous movies, and so people are kind of turning towards it and learning that graphic novels can be important works of literature and have important things to say. But another thing about Fullmetal Alchemist and other graphic novels or manga is that part of what they're doing that has literary value is not just in writing, it's also visual. Because there are many beautiful moments in the show and in the manga where not only are they interplaying between different moral perspectives, but then you look at the artistry, and the artistry has a symbolic nature to it too, where like a character might be cast in shadow and in light, and showing that, you know, in that moment they're making a choice between good and bad. And I think that is a level of craftsmanship that a novel, a straight novel that's written, cannot achieve that. You know what I mean? And in that way, I would argue that a graphic novel or a manga like this has even more depth than most regular novels, because they're thinking in multiple dimensions. They're not just thinking about their writing being deep, they're also thinking about the depth of the imagery that they're displaying. And I think that Fullmetal Alchemist does a really good job of doing that. Well, what do I want to say here? You know, I think we've made a lot of sacrifices, at least I have, to be here today and do this video.
The heat, or
the heat, you know, abandoning my wife and children
permanently?
Forgot that I had two. No, just for hours, a few hours. I haven't eaten in a while, but by paying that cost, I think that we have achieved the best possible video we can make, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Would you say so?
I made no sacrifices, so.
Hey.
Whoops.
Again, so you're like a villain. You're like one of the villains, and I'm one of the heroes, which I knew that to begin with. I mean, I knew that I was a heroic figure. I'm doing the Lord's work, or science work, or the government's work, depending on your perspective. Thanks, Sebastian. Thanks for or Storm. What do you prefer to be called in character? Do you want to be in character?
Yeah.
All right, man. It was learned. Baby Goku, he hasn't. Grandpa Gohan.
He's powering up.
Grandpa Gohan is powering up, exactly.